In 2011, for the first time, I went to my ancestral village in North Italy. Borca di Cadore had been in that location for at least 800 years, which spoke to a well-adapted population that knew how to live in the challenging environment of the mountains. They did things collectively and cooperatively. They brought in the hay together. They decided collectively which timber to take from the forest, and they decided with one another how the land would be farmed and shaped. But they also partied really well. That was part of their social cohesion. Parties were almost as long as those winters they experienced, and an 18th century poem described them as being so lively that death feared them, and that they had a great amount of morbine. Morbine translates from the Italian very roughly as that kind of excitement and energy that children experience when they play with each other, or that a woman experiences when she goes to meet her lover. So they had morbine, they had this connection to each other. They had the connection to an astonishingly beautiful landscape that evoked deep emotion from them. But when I looked at the contemporary public health data about this village, about the inhabitants who live there now, what I saw was in deep contrast to what was described in their history and what appears in their landscape. The rates of depression, alcoholism, and suicide were higher than the rest of Italy, and they had a demographic landslide of youth out-migration from the villages. How could this be? How could they go from morbine to so morbid? And why should we care? Why should we care that mountain villages are being abandoned by their inhabitants, not just in Italy, but around the world? Well, according to the United Nations, 13% of the world's population lives in mountain communities. That represents 915 million people. And it turns out that if you've been in a landscape for centuries, that you're good stewards of these landscapes. I always think of human populations in a landscape as damaging and reversing ecological progress, but it turns out that if you have history of experience in this, then you're actually a good manager of mountain resources. And there are a lot of mountain resources that we depend on as lowlanders that keep us healthy as well. So most of the fresh water in the world originates in mountain communities. The water that we use at the household level, the water we use in industry, in agriculture to generate electricity. Mountain communities house amazing biodiversity, including species that are unique to high altitudes. And all of us participate in the beauty of mountain communities, either through recreation or through spiritual solace and pilgrimages. We want mountain communities to flourish. We don't want people to abandon their villages. That puts us at risk of flooding in the lowlands if they don't manage the forest correctly, or having polluted water if they don't manage the waterways. Now it turns out that the people of Borca were worried about this problem as well. And I was supported in my curiosity by methodologies from both anthropology and public health. In anthropology, you are supposed to empathetically understand people in their own natural setting. The idea is to immerse yourself in the community, to follow people around in their ordinary lives, watch what they do, ask them questions about it, and see what they produce. In public health, it's now the disciplinary standard that we do research through a community-engaged approach. The people we work with are not objects of study under a microscope, but they're subjects, active participants in shaping the research questions, recruitment strategies, and disseminating the findings. So both of these supported my curiosity. And people were very generous in joining us in this project of inquiry. They took us to places that were important to them. The previous picture was a high pasture where one of our best friends in the project used to take the cows in the summer. This is our friend Mario Sala, who took us to the barn where his family still stores implements for farming. They showed us their handicrafts. This is Lala Renata showing us the pillowcases she embroidered for her wedding using the themes of local flowers. And this is Arcangelo Andreatta, one of the original founding families. He took us into his metal workshop so we could interview him there. They were active participants in what we were doing. And we were grateful to be able to interview them and talk with them in these settings. Now, as our interviews continued and we spent more time in the village, and by we, I mean me and a team of U of R undergraduates, what we learned was that youth felt especially estranged from the beautiful landscape and from their elders. They felt dismissed, disregarded, disrespected. And when I went to the elders and I said, "Did you know that the youth don't feel respected here?" The answer I got back, and I'm choking on it a little because I'm still surprised, is, "Well, they're stupid. Did you ever listen to them talk?" And it was like, bingo, I think I found the problem here. So what we decided to do in collaboration with the village was a photo voice project. Photo voice is used both in anthropology and public health as a way to give research tools to the community so that they systematically could collect data around problems that are essential to them. It gives them the right to research. So what happens in a photo voice project is you give the population cameras, you show them how to use it to create a narrative, and then you interview them about their photos. What is shown here? What does it mean to you? What sort of emotions does it evoke? And then you put on a public display narratives, photos, and the photographers, and you invite the community to come see what they found. So we gave them assignments in 4 different categories. We said, do a self-portrait, do a portrait of somebody you love, do a portrait of a place you love, and then do a portrait of a problem that you think needs to be fixed. And they embraced this and ran with it. This is Luca and Paolo and their self-portrait. They're young videographers. They have their own YouTube station. They want to be known beyond Borca, but they know they can do that right from their town. They don't feel that they're forced out to go for education or jobs. They have created and empowered themselves to have a voice beyond their village. This is Matteo. Matteo desperately wants to stay in Borca. He doesn't have neutral feelings about this. He deeply resents that he might have to go elsewhere. He chose to photograph himself at the intersection of the mighty Boite River and the stately Antelao. He wanted to capture both emotions that he sees reflected in his landscape, the power of the river, the tranquility of the mountain. This is Marco. Marco spent a long time arranging what he tells us is just a small part of his car collection around him so he could take his self-portrait there. He said, I didn't clean up the rest of the room. I wanted to be seen in my natural setting. Giacomo, when he decided to photograph a problem, looked at themes of caring and abandonment. This is one of the trails through the mountains, and he says we don't take enough care of the land that's so important to us, of the landscape that gives us comfort. This shows a lack of caring. This also doesn't make a lot of economic sense since tourists come here to see a beautiful landscape and we're not cleaning up. Mario took this picture of an abandoned second home. People used to come to Borca on vacation for the whole summer, and now they might only come for 2 weeks. This is a disruption and an eyesore, said Mario. He was very upset that these abandoned houses are uncared for. When we asked the teens to do a photograph of somebody they loved, much to our surprise, they all photographed men, and men were shown in unusual capacities as being emotionally nurturing, generous, supportive of their dreams and what they wanted to do. This was the only photograph we had of a woman. This is Mirta, a friend of Marco's who had made him lunch. And Marco thought it was important that she's hidden behind this bowl, as most women's labor and caring is unrecognized and unrewarded. He thought we should pay more attention to the people who care for us, even if their work is invisible. We took all the photos and we took the narratives and we displayed them in the community hall. The turnout was the best we've had at any of our community events. Mothers cried, fathers embraced their children. The mayor took a careful look at every photograph and read every narrative. The teens were much encouraged. They were so excited about this success that they took their exhibition to a regional scholarly conference on the fragility of mountain communities. They were the only community people who presented there. They were the youngest people at this conference. They came away from that conference so energized and so confident that they've now started teaching photo voice to other teens as a way to create social change. And this summer, what the teens are planning on doing is documenting through photographs and videos their attempts to create the changes that they documented in their photos last summer. They're confident they can make change, that they can document the process, and they can teach it to other teens. Curiosity empowers communities, but curiosity plus research skills doubly empowers them. Thank you.